going.
All right.
So here we are at the beginning of the 20th century.
1905. The U.S. Supreme Court requires California to extend public education to the children of Chinese immigrants.
1912. New Mexico enters the Union as an officially bilingual state, authorizing funds for voting in both Spanish and English, as well as for bilingual education. Article 12 of the state constitution also prohibits segregation for children of Spanish descent.
1917, Smith-Hughes Act passed, providing federal funding for vocational education. Big manufacturing corporations pushed this because they want to remove job skill training from the apprenticeship programs of trade unions and bring it under their own control.
1920s to 1940s. In the 1920s, many African Americans moved from the rural South to work in factories in the North. In 1937, the Homeowners Loan Corporation issues a map redlining areas with high concentration of minorities as riskier for mortgage defaults. Due to this and the disuse of restrictive covenants, blacks are nearly eliminated from the suburban housing market.
1920. All non-native women are given the right to vote.
1921, San Antonio's Orden Hijos de America, Order of the Sons of America, organizes Latino workers to raise awareness of civil rights issues and fight for fair wages, education, and housing.
1924, an act of Congress makes Native Americans U.S. citizens for the first time, suffrage being a right of citizenship.
1930 to 1950s, the NAACP brings a series of suits over unequal teachers' pay for blacks and whites in southern states. At the same time, southern states realize they are losing African American labor to northern cities. These two sources of pressure resulted in some increase of spending on black schools in the South.
1932, a survey of 150 school districts reveals that 3/4 of them are using so-called intelligence testing to place students in different academic tracks. Later research will validate that these tests do not measure intelligence.
Right, and these are similar to the tests that were used throughout the South to prevent voting rights from African Americans. So, you know, great questions of how many bubbles are in a bar of soap, and similar questions that staff could change depending on who was sitting in front of them in terms of who got tracked into what kind of classes.
1942 to 1946, Executive Act 9066 orders the forced removal of over 120,000 Japanese Americans to internment camps. Those about to receive their degrees from the University of California system don't. It is not until the 2000s that the survivors of the camps get their diplomas.
1945. At the end of World War II, the GI Bill of Rights gives to thousands of working class men college scholarships for the first time in U.S. history. However, the ability of black men living in the South to access colleges is significantly limited. While the legislation was race neutral, the impact was a significant increase in the disparity between white and black men accessing college education.
Right, remember back in the 1870s, post-Civil War, talking about Reconstruction, I said, remember this moment? This is where this pattern is happening again, where we legislate something that looks like it's going to benefit everybody and instead seeks to create the disparity between race and class.
1947, Mexican-American parents sue several California school districts, challenging the segregation of Latino students in separate schools. The California Supreme Court rules in the parents' favor in Mendez versus Westminster, arguing segregation violates children's constitutional rights. The case is an important precedent for Brown versus Board of Education.
And so this is Ms. Mendez with President Obama, so just recently getting the Medal of Honor for her work in that case, but it took that long for that case to get recognized for what it was.
1948, Educational Testing Service is formed, merging the College Entrance Examination Board, the Cooperative Test Service, the Graduate Records Office, the National Committee on Teachers Examinations, and others with huge grants from the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations. These testing services found their work on and continue the work of eugenists like Carl Brigham, the originator of the SAT, who did research proving that immigrants were feeble-minded.
Right, so this was the guy who would take the skulls of various races of people and fill them with birdshot to determine the volume of the skulls and therefore brain capacity. And what he would do and his assistants would do in the office would be to pack down the white skulls so that they would have bigger brains, and that the skulls of other people would have lesser brains. And so all of our initial college testing and all those tests that many of us had to take to prove that we were qualified to do something is based in a movement that was about racist classification of people.
1954, Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka. The Supreme Court unanimously agrees that segregated schools are inherently unequal and must be abolished.
So this is often held up as a really important moment in the civil rights history of education, and I just want to flag the side of it that had some negative effects, which was that when schools were segregated, which was unfair and inequitable, the positive thing that existed in that situation was that black students had black teachers who lived in their community, who knew them, who understand what was going on. And a lot of what school desegregation did was it prompted the trend that we looked at the beginning, where students of color, black and other groups of students of color, now predominantly have white teachers who don't necessarily understand their cultural context or lived experience. And so while Brown overall was positive, some of the social implications for how kids interact with teachers that resulted from Brown aren't always looked at fully in the context of that history.
1957, a federal court orders integration of Little Rock, Arkansas public schools. Governor Orville Faubus sends his National Guard to physically prevent 9 African-American students from enrolling at an all-white Central High School. Reluctantly, President Eisenhower sends federal troops to enforce the court order, not because he supports desegregation, but because he can't let a state governor use military power to defy the U.S. federal government.
Right? The president cannot let a governor defy federal power. That's not how I was taught that story. Right? So again, take a few minutes, have the conversation. What are